The demon clown looked at the expedition team with its disgustingly toothy grin, snickering playfully. None of them had ever seen a demon before. Its kind was supposed to have disappeared already. Just by encountering such a high-ranking devil, everyone could feel the malicious intent crawling on their skins. The dark energy diffused throughout the expedition team, caressing them individually with an electrifying chill. Debilitating fear and dreadful anxiety set in. Once you became completely consumed by those horrible negative emotions, all hell broke loose. With a single flick of a finger, the demon clown started its torment. Multiple knights floated into the air as if puppets on strings. They had become nothing but victims of the demon that loved torture, subject to unbearable pain and suffering. The brave knights were nothing but mere toys in the claws of such a powerful being. Before some fully succumbed, they begged and pleaded to be saved by Sir Sevian. The captain just stood there, frozen in fear and unable to save his troops. The demon clown claimed that he was their master now, so there was no point in shouting for help. As a consequence of their transgression, the demon clown flicked the air with his malicious energy. It took the knight's head off on his body like a huge bullet made of darkness. The demon clown jumped and clapped for joy after doing such a heinous thing. Magic that rips your head off, only a demon could have something that brutal. But the evil incarnate took pride in his deeds. He thought that the slaughter was amazing. Now all it needed was a round of applause from the unwilling and terrified audience. Sir Sevian was breaking mentally as his precious soldiers were being captured and brutally killed before his eyes. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move. He wanted to save his men, but the demonic mental grip was stronger. The malice emanating from the demon clown and its ferocity were unbearable. The entire expedition team was sitting ducks. Even Captain Gregory Griffin, Vice Captain Amira, and Ilia Lindsay weren't exempt from the demon's grip. In this hopeless situation, where everyone's movement was restricted, a faint glide of a cape served as hope. One person had broken free from the demon clown's absurd power. That person started charging at the demon clown with a glow of chance for everyone else. It was our boy. His name was Swordmaster Irene Pereira. Making a mad dash straight to the clown's position, he conjured his sword out of thin air. Sir Sevian watched everything happen. He asked himself just how that young man could move freely, charging like a bull at that demon without an ounce of hesitation. The look on his face was the look of unbridled will and concentration. He's just like me. For real. The demon clown finally caught on to what was happening and threatened to kill the other knights if Aaron did not stop his bum rush. That threat did not sway Aaron a single bit. He charged in even faster, with his sorcery sword near completion. The clown was starting to get the feeling that it would take more than just words to stop that young man. So he went ahead and started fulfilling his promise to kill the captive knights agonizingly. Aaron's target was one thing and one thing only. Some knights were choking and groaning in pain on the ground, but he did not spare them a glance. He apologized to them inside his mind. He was well aware that they were suffering pains beyond human comprehension. Aaron knew that his actions right now were putting a lot of the lives of the expedition team in danger. He might even end up leaving their friends and families with irreparable scars. All their anger and hatred may end up directed at him after all was said and done. But he wouldn't shy away from that possibility. He could stomach their comments after he goes toe-to-toe with the demon inextricably melded to his life. And for that, he could move forward with the determination to take on whatever responsibility that he must. It's a seemingly all-powerful demon versus a young genius sword master. With such a wicked being in front of Aaron, all he could think about was swinging his sword and vanquishing evil. The special vertical slash practiced throughout 2 lifetimes tore the ground, but only grazed the demon's hand a little bit. A demon does not like when situations are getting out of control. That's precisely what's happening now, as it bled through the wound. With every fiber of his being resisting the malicious grip, Aaron kept on telling himself that hesitating at this moment was a luxury he couldn't afford. Bozo had bigger problems, though. A blade that could cut through darkness was highly unusual. It felt insulting and unnerving to the demon clown. To retaliate, he ended the suffering of the remaining knights, just like he promised earlier. As the demonic power started piling the troops close together, Aaron looked back urgently. A hail of dark blades started raining down from the skies, ready to pierce the skulls and bodies of the horrified knights below. That was when Lulu jumped into action in her human form, performing a spell that effectively defended against the blades. She assured Aaron that she would be taking care of things on the side of the knights, while he could go all out against the boss without worries. The demon clown angrily cursed at the barrier that the little girl just pulled out in clutch time. While the enemy was throwing tantrums, Aaron was priming another full-powered slash. He brought the blade down with a lightning-fast execution of slashes, each one exploding in power. Under the barrage of surprisingly hard-hitting strikes, the clown finally started to realize that this feeling of powerlessness was familiar. Bozo had a gut feeling that Aaron's sword was not a stranger. This was not the first time they faced off. The demon asked itself just when and where he felt this sensation. And more importantly, who was this nobody? That's pushing a higher being into the corner. Aaron's barrage of attacks resulted in the hold of the malice over everyone, starting to slowly weaken. Perry the court mage can finally move a little. Ilia, on the other hand, had already shaken off the demonic touch, running and shouting past everyone that the fight was not over yet. They needed to hurry and help Aaron. To think that another one of the youngsters overcame such heavy malice so quickly, the leaders of their respective factions felt left behind. So Sir Sevian and Perry the court mage started trying even harder to break free. Meanwhile, light and dark continued to clash against one another in the middle of the cavernous hall. Amidst the pitch-black field, Aaron's beautiful blade was the sole source of illumination. It was equally picturesque and destructive as he swarmed around to tear the clown apart. But suffering such an injury wasn't a problem for the spawn of hell. Tasting those slashes just made one thing clear in the clown's mind. This young man that was giving him such a headache must be Karin Winker. Hearing those words come out of the demon's mouth fired up Aaron even more. His reaction was an obvious confirmation of that possibility. The clown's energy started intensifying as it laughed maliciously. Ilia was way too far to assist Aaron, so she could only shout. Suddenly, the dark energy in the room was replaced by a growing heat coming from an immaculate explosion. It lit up the area even more than Aaron's blade did. The booming energy started scattering everywhere as everyone, even the demon clown itself, watched warily. If the devil was surprised, then the only other party in the area capable of such feats had finally arrived. Coming from all the way out on the other side of the supposed treasure dungeon was the joint partner of this very expedition. Anya cried as she used everything she had saved up for 3 whole years just to make an explosion like this one happen. But it wouldn't enable Ednet Crescentia and her Black Knights to go sicko mode on this freaky clown. She made quite a flashy entry, but her next move was on a different level when it came to speed. Bozo was blinded by the lights and couldn't see what was about to happen properly. The next thing you knew, a deep rumble had already come from the sky to crack the demon's face off, making the thing scream in pain. When the explosion, smoke, and dust finally cleared, the dark hall returned to its grim atmosphere, but the ground had been wrecked. Aaron looked forward, not daring to lower his guard, while huffing in exhaustion. As for the demon clown, it looked like it had been vaporized into a smudge of dark ink on the floor. Everyone could finally move freely as the malice cleared out. To take out a demon in one go like that was just unreal. That's exactly what Ednet's remarkable power represents: brutality and finality. A true genius of the blade. Everyone hurriedly ran into Ednet's position to check on the captain. As soon as everyone lowered their guard to celebrate the victory, she started sensing something off. Ednet immediately shouted at her troops to halt their advance. Her gut was right. The black ink that was supposed to be the demon's remains started boiling and bubbling. Aaron flinched at the sight of this substance moving about. Then the disgusting guttural sounds of flesh forming and melding together assaulted everyone's ears. The goofy, lanky, and pointed shoes of the clown were back, as was its entire body. Upon reconstructing its body, the clown did not look too jolly at all. Its physique looked a lot leaner and emaciated, making the demon look more menacing. When the reconstruction was completed, it tilted its head right back up. The mask that concealed the twisted fleshy form below had been cut in half, revealing the demon's nasty form beneath. I want this clown on my next birthday party. Ednet swiftly gripped her sword and rushed in, while yelling at everyone to get back on account of the mortal danger up front. Those shouts were not meant for Aaron though. Our boy came here to get some hits in. Ednet from the front and Aaron coming from the back, it was starting to look like the demon clown had nowhere to run. But the creature's words of farewell, while clutching the other half of the mask, sounded nothing like it came from defeat. Exerting extra pressure on its grip, the clown shattered the half mask. What followed was the appearance of a dark sphere, encircling the demon with a dense dark energy. The pressure coming from the sphere made the earth rumble and deterred Aaron and Ednet from coming closer easily. Ilia and the captains could also feel the heaviness in the air around them. A scarred foot took a step forward on rocky ground. It was unkempt and nasty. The foot belonged to old man Karin. he asked himself where in the world he was. He could not see anything. It was just pitch black in every direction. He did not know how much time had passed. The last thing he remembered was that he was chasing after a demon. All of his questions and confusions were set aside as a bright light illuminated the nothingness. Footsteps could be heard getting louder and louder. That's because Aaron started walking closer and closer to old man Karin. He addressed the confused old man by referring to the sword lover here by his long-forgotten name. Karin naturally wanted to know who the young man was and how he could know his name. Aaron honestly explained that with the help of a friend, he was able to look at his past life. It might be hard to believe, but they are one and the same in two different time periods. Hearing the term past life made one thing clear. Karin realized that he must already be dead in Aaron's current timeline. The old man has wandered the world for a long time. He reached the point when he could not see anything anymore. A village that he lived in, the castle they used to visit, the city, all of it, especially his homeland, Gasco. Aaron frankly told Karin that Gasco had already disappeared hundreds of years ago. The old man's family, his people, his descendants, all of them are gone now. For someone who was just hearing that everything and everyone he cared about had been erased, Karin seemed awfully chill about it. Aaron continued that it might be the case for the old man that there are still people who need protection. Karin's blade started dematerializing into sparks of light. The sparks then started transferring in front of Aaron, forming into his improved sword forged from his sheer will. Old man Karin watched in surprise and appreciation. The young man in front of him was emitting the same aura that he used to cultivate non-stop for a lifetime. He did not think that this fine young man would end up inheriting his purpose in life. Now he can finally lay to rest in every sense of the word. Karin touched the glowing great sword by the blade without a fear of its sharpness. He touched both sides of the sword with a prayer stance, entrusting the rest of the mission to this worthy successor. The old man's soul started to shift and turn, ultimately accumulating inside Aaron's sword. This blade in his hands felt completely different from before. In the middle of the void with no other sensation, the sword felt like an extension of his own body. That feeling of newfound control and clarity suddenly jolted Aaron awake to what was happening. He quickly slashed forward, tearing through the darkness that had seemingly covered his entire being. The flash of holy light coming from the slash ripped the sinister spell open with unprecedented force. Demon Clown was starting to panic. Pennywise over here was not expecting that this young man could brute force his way into his safe space so quickly. Locking in on the target of this hunt, Aaron beckoned Karin Winker to lend him the strength to finish this thing. His aura blade looked sharper and brighter than ever. It was a weapon of steel and gold, encased with the pure will power. Bozo knew that Aaron was bad news. He tried to stop his advance by pleading for a timeout, so the young man could calm down and listen for a little bit. But there was nothing that this clown could say that Aaron would want to hear. Bozo just blurted out that all of Aaron's comrades are still sealed within his darkness. Staving them would still be possible. The clown asserted that Aaron's winning chances weren't that high, and losing could mean the eternal imprisonment of everyone else, inside the nothingness. So Aaron should think extra carefully about his next move. Demon Clown observed his reaction, believing that the young man was hesitating, just like every other human would be. The clown just needs a little longer. But the villain's internal monologue was stopped by Aaron asking if buying time like this even brings benefits. The clown was obviously startled that he had been read like an open book.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Aaron could see through everything now. No matter how many vile tactics this demon has, it won't work against the hero. That certainly infuriated our Bozo the clown. While Aaron was backing the evil incarnate into a corner, another sharp energy started piercing the veil of darkness. Ednet Crescentia brute forced her way out of that purgatory, with her rough slashes tearing through the spell. Now Demon Clown really was in the ropes. The young man was bad news enough. Now there's that freaky woman too. Ednet took her position beside Aaron, asking him how long he had been out of that oblivion. Instead of focusing on the enemy in front, she was more eager to know just how this fledgling reached the demon before she could. Ednet could sense that he was still weaker in terms of everything else. That fact hasn't changed. So, it was illogical that he somehow managed to reach the source of all this malice first. Her train of thought was interrupted by another piercing light sneaking out of the dark veil. With precise motion and fluid technique, Ilia was the third person to break out of the darkness by herself. As soon as she stepped out of the cursed place, she looked around. She noticed Ednet looking at her for the first time. Even Jirag, the vice captain of the Black Knights, hadn't been able to solve the darkness, but this young woman did. Ilia just responded with a scowl on her face. She found the captain's question way too offensive, as if Ednet did not believe in her capabilities one bit. At least the rookie's words made Ednet realize that they should just talk about this stuff later. For now, they must team up and finally end this revoltingly vile creature, masquerading as a trickster clown. As the trio charged in to close the gap, Ednet instructed the two never to give the demon any openings, as they kept the attacks going. The clown ground its teeth in extreme frustration, promising to itself that letting these pesky humans make it out of this place safely after pushing this far was out of the question. As the swordsman came closer and closer, the demon's expression started becoming more deformed and sinister. Its patience had long since run out for all of these pests. The clown yanked the other half of his mask out of the bare flesh that it was attached to. The face behind the mask was way too vile. Ednet and Ilia watched cautiously. This was the demon's final gambit. Everyone, including itself, shall die here and now, under the unrelenting force of self-destruction. All three of them flinched before the swiftly climbing level of power, culminating in a growing brightness of energy. A massive boom of sinister energy spread throughout the entirety of the area. Aaron could not take his eyes off the brilliantly vile explosion, certain that they could not possibly dodge something like this. But a resolute voice cut through that defeatist mindset, telling them to stand back. Aaron just saw a blurred dash, past him through his peripheral vision. Ednet blew past both young sword masters, clutching her blade forward, valiantly pushing herself toward the impending doom. That was when she decided to show some of her otherworldly swordsmanship techniques. Countless slashes were performed. They were so fast that only the sound of the explosion itself getting sliced away was heard. The demon clown had lost, and the evidence could be seen in the cracks forming on the surface of the dark veil. From the cracks came out some hissing noise as the wall of illusion started breaking down. It finally shattered, leaving shards of dark glass scattered all over the ground. The demonic presence had been crushed. This did not come at cheap cost. The genius Ednet Crescentia had to give almost everything she had to perform such a miraculous deed. Her exhaustion was apparent as she tried to fill her lungs with air out of sheer exhaustion. Ednet's eyes were closing down for the day, but she still looked to the side when someone mentioned her name. Aaron looked at her with concern, asking why she protected them. She could not even answer before the last remaining iota of energy inside her body was completely zapped out, closing her eyes in fatigue. Before collapsing, she answered that she herself did not know why she did. Plopping onto the floor, her soldiers started running toward their commander with utmost concern. She looked like a beautiful princess in her sleep. Drifting into dreamland, she noticed that she was back in the darkness. Giving it a few moments, she was transported to a place of wooden houses and impoverished people. This place was important to her. She would still remember the faces that the kids made when she promised that they would be able to eat 2 times a day now. Ednet could recall how she proudly pointed at herself, assuring everyone that they were moving up in life. Grandpa Jack found work for her, and she pushed onward until she could make it so the kids could eat 3 meals a day. But when she got back to Grandpa Jack's place, she was informed that the job was gone. Some looters came by the day before and robbed his humble store again. Crime has gotten so bad that the old man could not even afford to keep his business open anymore. It seems like these have been happening more and more as of late. Because of the Civil War, there are fewer and fewer jobs to go around. At this rate, Ednet won't be able to take care of the kids. As she pondered that dilemma, she thought about what to do with the letter she received earlier. It bore the glorious crest of sword and shield, the stamp of Chrono Academy. Some wandering knight just happened to notice that she had the talent to become a fine swordsman. That guy gave her the recommendation to be esteemed Swordsmanship Academy. She promised that if she became a skilled swordsman, she could make more than enough money to take care of her friends. That's what she was considering that night. The next day came with the children clamoring and chattering around her. Almost all of them, especially the younger ones, could not bear to see Ednet leave for a place so far away. She just needed 1 year. She promised to get super strong within 12 months and come back to this village in no time. That was the vow that she gave to her friends, the kids who were relying on her to survive. Ednet Crescentia's time in Chronos was nothing short of legendary. With every collision of blades, she kept piling valuable experiences in matches. From the first time that she picked up the blade, she had never lost even once. News of her absurd achievements started circulating everywhere. She became a bona fide expert in a single year of enrollment. She was dubbed as a monster. Even Ednet herself was fired up with the feeling of her newfound strength she honed. It was about time to fulfill her promise to the kids. It's time to go back home. The journey back was long, and the arrival shattered her heart. The impoverished village that she considered home has been razed to the ground. She was not expecting to come back to a pile of ruined wood. If this was the state of the place, then where did all the kids go? Her question was immediately answered when one of her friends, Oliver, showed himself. He gave Ednet the rundown of everything that happened. The kids that are not here were either captured or died already. All that was left were the innocent toys and trinkets that all of them shared before. It was the first time that Ednet felt completely powerless. She was so caught up in the success that she attained in the university, and now she asked herself what she was chasing. Oliver noticed that Ednet hadn't spoken nor moved for quite a while now. He asked if she was fine. She stayed silent, quietly noticing the shine of the dagger coming from the weapon on Oliver's waist. Ednet also noted that his clothes seemed new, asking where he got them. Oliver struggled to give a straight answer. She went straight to the point and asked if he stole them. The other kids who survived looked at Ednet with silent vigilance. Oliver explained that they had no other choice than to turn to crime if they wanted to continue surviving. She understood where they were coming from. The blame doesn't fall on the kids, as they've been driven to this point after living such painful lives. One thing was clear: they won't be able to go back to how things once were back then. Their innocence was a thing of the past. Naivety has no room for survival. Ednet looked at her remaining friends one last time, wishing them a good life and bidding her final farewell. She left with heavy and hurried steps, not turning back while clenching her fist in frustration. Ednet believed that even if they had lived in a better environment, they definitely would not have changed. The idea of moral bankruptcy would cease to exist only if she could change the world. Through that, she could make sure that things like this won't happen again. As soon as she got back to Kronos, a different Ednet surfaced. She ordered a gathering of people in the town square. All of them shared one thing in common. These are the swordsmen who failed their final evaluation at Kronos Swordsmanship Academy. For those who were brave enough to join her today, she has a proposal. Ednet announced that she would be establishing her own band of mercenaries. Everyone was fired up at the thought of fighting under the name of a genius. The possibility of getting famous was quite an enticing thing for many. But she was not making this group simply to earn money or glory. Their main mission was going to be to make the world a better place. To do that, they must make their name known by going around the nation and defeating proud noble families. Once they gain a decent reputation, while continuously gathering more people, they will expand out into the continent with domination. Regardless of one's talent or status, no one will be able to ignore them. Ultimately, using the massive influence that they will gain would be the key to changing the world. A few years later, her band of mercenaries started expressing their dissatisfaction with working under the Holy Kingdom, as they lose their rights and independence, becoming nothing but pawns to be sent off on missions. If it's honor, she wants. The mercenaries behind her could not care less. They like how things have been for them. She has a big dream, but not everyone has the same ambition. She accepted the sentiments of her mercenaries, even though most of them shared the same attitude. Considering that the band she built had already strayed away from the path that she laid down, Ednet just decided that she would be the one to leave. She just wished for everyone to live a good life. The first sign of impurity in her plans or principles, her primary response has always been to walk away. She does not really hate her comrades for being satisfied with what they have in the present. She knew that she still had the power to change the world, even if she had to do it on her own. This type of thing has happened to her so many times that the thought of relying on anyone else has become nonsensical. Ednet firmly believed that she just had to be perfect and do well on her own. On her way to the next place in her plans, Gregory and Anya chased her, asking for permission to tag along. She coldly responded that they could do whatever they wanted, but her aloofness just added to her charm in the duo's eyes. Ednet has been so caught up in her own head that she thinks there's no need to be happy. She was already preparing for the time that they grow tired and leave her side like everyone else. She has become so used to abandonment that the poor young lady has made peace with solitude. She's one of them emo goth girls I keep hearing about. Inside her mind, Ednet Crescencio walked a very lonely path of solitude. The demon that had infiltrated her psyche posed a very crucial question. What did she gain from doing all of this? All she stood to gain was a country to rule as she pleased, and that's it. It was foolish to think that there could be something more that exists at the end of that. The clown's true form was as vile as its words, as it asserted that Ednet was just going to end up alone for the rest of her miserable life. That was where the devil made its mistake. The clown could not comprehend the true depths of her plans. Realizing that it made the wrong move, the demon's remaining consciousness was slashed cleanly eyes wide with surprise. Ednet dealt the final blow with unwavering conviction. If she feared ending up alone, then she never would have started in the first place.
You're goddamn right.
She opened her eyes to Jirog and Anya's worried, relieved, and excited faces. Just like that, she woke up from the aftereffects of slaying a high-ranking demon. She had gotten so weak that sitting back up brought about a sharp pain traveling in her body. Anya had to remind her not to overdo it right away. When she asked how long she was out of consciousness, Jirog answered that it had been 2 whole days. As for the mission status, everything sounded good. There were no additional casualties to the expedition team. But the dying demon left them with the dying curse to solve. A barrier had formed around everyone. The entire team had been trapped inside this damned dungeon. There were also some soldiers who had almost succumbed to the darkness and hopelessness of their situation. Thanks to Irene Pereira, they were rid of their dark thoughts. The manifestation of that young man's aura and the rare ability to spread his will, exerting influence on others, was nothing short of miraculous. Now that Ednet had a rough idea of how things stood right now, she looked like she just had a crucial realization. Ednet finally knew the reason why she threw herself at that demon without hesitation. It was because deep down, she believed in that blonde brat. As long as Aaron was around, he made people believe that everything would be alright and that he would protect everyone. She quietly watched how the young man interacted with Ilia and the expedition team. They were supposed to be trapped in this cursed dungeon for 2 days now, but the atmosphere felt as though they were just on a camping trip. Ednet felt her heart skip a beat. She knew what she was seeing. She knew all too well because she used to be that same figure who brought light to a hopeless situation for the kids back home. Suddenly, her resolute gaze softened just a little bit. It was not even perceptible. Her first order to her vice captain was to call and gather all their forces. In Ednet's current condition, it's going to be a bit tough to escape this place with everyone. Even an unbridled genius knew when to ask for help from other people. But this was a seemingly once-in-a-lifetime event. The vice captain of the Black Knights had never heard her request external help before. The expedition team captain's orders were absolute. Everyone gathered around near the border of the barrier, and none of them knew what Ednet was about to say. Everyone was already aware that the barrier must be removed if they wanted to get the hell out of this place. But even someone as powerful as her can't handle this one solo. That's why she's looking for some assistance. It's widely known that the most effective force against a demon's curse is the utilization of holy power. However, it's an ability that should not be carelessly taught to just anyone. But if you're the progenitor of a similar power, there should be no problem. From now on, Ednet Crescentia will be teaching everyone her unique swordsmanship technique for vanquishing evil. Everyone was shocked. She must be talking about the infamous blade of the hero. It's a skill that many heroes of the bygone eras have used, even without holy power. It's a secret technique that could stand against the power of demons. Countless brave trailblazers have adapted its style to make it their own and deliver justice to the propagators of evil. To hear that she was going to teach everyone such a valuable technique was mind-blowing. Palank's sword master, Sivian Verot, had to calm himself down. He was aware that even if she tried to make it digestible, picking up the technique wouldn't be easy for the vast majority of the knights. Amira quickly perked up. It's not every day that you get the chance to get some pointers for a legendary technique. It's an honor, and she promised to do her best. Her enthusiasm regarding a matter affected the knights around her. It didn't matter if it was supremely difficult. They vowed to do everything to their utmost ability. Ednet smiled. It seemed like a lot of them were willing to learn. It would be best to keep their options open, so everyone will be permitted to participate. But the 2 people she would like to join in were Ilia and Aaron, the promising young sword masters. The air turned tense in a snap. Everyone wondered how Ilia would answer, thinking that having to learn from Ednet would be a big shot to her pride. But contrary to everyone's expectations, the young woman opts into the program with genuine gratefulness and excitement. She even used formalities when addressing the captain of the Black Knights. Ednet and her seem to have established a deeper understanding of each other after fighting against the demon together. Next, the captain directed the same question to Aaron. Naturally, he answered with the most Aaron thing ever. He vowed to do his best to break the curse, to get everyone out. It has been settled. The training camp will start now. Before they could even dive deep into the sword, everyone must understand the magic that demons use. Demon magic correlates to the element of darkness. It is everything that they use to deceive and ultimately destroy humans. As everyone already knows, the opposite force that could consume dark energy is holy power. It's essentially the belief in God shining brightly on its own. It's the perfect opposite and counter to evil. But what everyone was not aware of was that human will can act in place of God's graces. Harnessing the power of the heart, especially the will to protect this world, can go a long way. You can catch that will and materialize it into energy, channeled into the realm of swordsmanship. This is the sword that Ednet wields, the sword that protects the world and erases demons from existence. Those who lack talent could not grasp what the captain's words meant. They don't even know where to start. Of course, this would not be easy. Understanding the basic principles is not enough. Transforming your will into the art of the sword is a completely different beast. Common sense dictates that it would be impossible to materialize clear will and energy just by hearing the theory. But Aaron simply does not operate on the same plane as common sense. The vice captain of Black Knights could only sigh in defeat. Staring at the intense energy surrounding his blade, Aaron wondered if this was the blade of the hero. Ednet confirmed that he got it already. However, she likes to call it by a different and more fitting name, the Blade of the Heart. Trapped inside the demon's curse barrier, 3 weeks have passed. The only ones that managed to grasp Ednet's teachings were the young sword masters, Ilia and Aaron. No one else has even gotten close to materializing their Blade of the Heart in the past 3 weeks. Throughout the process, it seemed like Aaron had the most promising results at first. But now, it looks as though Ilia is growing at a much more monstrous rate. It might be because of her innate talent, or it might be because of some other special reason. Ilia's heart does not necessarily desire to protect the world from the harm that demons bring. But she held something much more important in her heart. The will to protect what she'd like to protect right now. More like the person she'd like to protect right now. The one precious to her. Damn, I need me a Swordmaster GF. For real. While the final leg of Ednet's training camp was on its way, some of the knights posted up near the barrier noticed something odd. One of the guards swears that he just heard a noise coming from the other side of the barrier just now. What followed that noise was a massive crack piercing through the thick veil of demonic curse. From the small slit, a massive expansion of energy swiftly shattered and eviscerated the clown's annoying final gambit. Everyone trapped inside could finally see what was happening. The barrier was being torn apart. From the path made with holy light, a man equipped with heavy armor and heavier steps stepped inside. Based on the pressure they emit and the power that they hold, these people are not to be messed with. A whole squad of people bearing extraordinary power has come to liberate the trapped knights. At the forefront of the intimidating team were some dreadfully powerful knights clad in ivory armor reflecting the light behind them. Aaron looked at them and could not take his eyes off their grand presence. The captain of the expedition, the indomitable genius, Ednet Presencia, actually bent her knee to pay respects to the man leading the charge. She humbly apologized for showing the man such a pitiful sight, addressing the man as captain. This Nordic god Santa Claus is named Julius Hmul, the captain of the White Knights, hailing from the Holy Kingdom of Arvilius. Having been rescued by reinforcements from the Holy Kingdom, everyone prepared for the debriefing at the Rabat Territory Expedition party camp outside. Everyone was hard at work organizing their supplies. Once the commanders were done with their meeting, it would be time to return to their respective territories. Amira was just relieved that thanks to the cavalry from the Holy Kingdom of Arvilius, they got out of the dungeon when they did. However, no one was expecting to see a team made up solely of sword masters from top to bottom. The ones that came with Julius weren't the usual White Knights. It was entirely possible that they were a secret group created by the Holy Kingdom. The fact that they ended up in the same location of demonic activity seemed fishy too. Of all the dungeons that they could have gone to, their involvement in this one couldn't be a simple coincidence. Let's hear from the leaders themselves. As established, the treasure dungeon they were expecting was actually a demon's den. As the one in charge of reinforcements, Julius promised that everyone would get a compensation fee. But that fee came with a single condition. Everyone involved must not speak about anything that happened inside that place. Court Mage Perry reckoned that Julius was worried about the mass panic that might ensue if the news spread. Taking the hush money would be the right move. More importantly, something much more confusing was afoot. Perry could actually recognize a few of the faces, standing with the captain of the White Knights. In this room, there were legendary paladins, who were said to have died several years ago. All of them looked sharp and alive, albeit a little older. Just what in the world was the Holy Kingdom cooking up behind the scenes? A week after their rescue, Aaron stayed at the territory to mull over some things. He kept thinking about what happened inside that damn place. Aaron could vividly recall the point when the demon was about to blow itself up. He couldn't forget the powerful image of Ednet standing in front of everyone without a hint of hesitation in her body. Even though he was determined to beat the demon, he had frozen at the most critical junction. That just goes to show that no matter how far he had come, he was still lacking in a lot of ways. Aaron needed to work even harder. While Aaron was lost in his own thoughts, a familiar voice caused him to look up. Sir Jirok had swept through all over the place just to find him and asked how he was. It had been a while after all. Jirok also had a sudden request. There is some place that Aaron needs to go to right now. It turns out that Ednet had recommended both Aaron and Ilia for the expedition force. The mention of another expedition force implied a terrifying possibility. Sir Jirok confirmed what was on Aaron's mind. There is a high possibility that other demons are hiding around the continent. Soon, an expedition force would be established to eradicate them. Also, according to the Holy Kingdom's thorough investigation, there is a high chance that the clown demon has survived. Aaron heard that bit of information and anxiety washed over him. He and Ilia quickly accepted the invitation to appear before Julius Huddle and his supposedly dead paladins. The old man confirmed if these two were really the ones that gained Ednet's recommendation. She politely introduced their names and where they hail from. Ilia was the most confused one out of anyone here. She was not expecting Ednet to recommend her for something this significant. That girl has not even looked in her direction once this whole time, so why in the hell would she put Ilia's name up for the expedition team? One of the old men sprung up from his seat, asserting that the youngsters would need additional verification before they proceeded. He quickly stepped out of the booth and appeared behind the fledglings with a scowl. It's time for them to be tested properly. The venue was the indoor training grounds of Rabat territory. Everyone gathered to watch as Aaron was up to be evaluated first. Old Head asked the young man if he had any questions before they formally began. As Aaron conjured his blade into existence, he asked for the Old Head's name respectfully. Quincy Myers cordially introduced himself. He's only telling Aaron that because he thinks the young buck could keep a secret. Ilia remembered that Quincy Myers was the former captain of the Red Knights. As far as everyone on the continent knew, he had supposedly passed away 10 years ago. Looking around, this supposed reinforcement group really does consist of some old bats. It's fair to assume that all of them are paladins who have been pronounced dead. Quincy confidently asserted that Aaron could have the first attack. The young man thanked him for the opportunity. His blade started emitting its bright light, a faint hum of resonance covering the entirety of the sword. The old men watching the test had to admit that Aaron wielded a pretty decent blade, and he's only 23 years old. He has an impressive aura for someone so young. However, at the level of the people in this room, Aaron knew that just an ore sword was not good enough to do the job. In order to prove himself to these battle-hardened veterans, he needs to show something above and beyond. As soon as Aaron locked in, Quincy felt uneasy. He looked at the young man closing his eyes, standing deathly still, and channeling a humongous amount of will into his blade. Aaron could already tell that all these paladins surrounding them were extraordinary. And amongst these powerful people, Ednet was able to stand confidently, as she belonged naturally. He does not want to get left behind like this. He too wants to stand on the same pedestal as these monsters that have already proven themselves. As the fire in his heart kicked up a storm of flames, Aaron's eyes jolted open. He was literally burning with a desire to beat the captain of the Black Knights someday. That scorching willpower started manifesting itself in his sword perfectly. Ednet was quite surprised to see the young man's flame from his blade of heart had gotten stronger, and it was being supplemented by the 5-element divine technique. Julius remained as stoic as ever, watching the assessment close as a hawk. Quincy Myers, who's on the other end of that burning blade, admitted that it's an impressive force. Since he conceded the first strike, he'll have to take that shot head-on, and for that, going all out would be required. Before the first blow could even erupt, Julius Howell's imposing voice thunderously stopped the match. He announced that the spar would end here, and both parties would put their swords away.
Are you serious right now, bro?
Quincy wanted to protest, but Julius pointed out what everyone saw. The old man wouldn't have come out unscathed against Aaron's attack. It would have only led to unnecessary injuries. The big boss also praised Aaron, calling his swordsmanship impressive. Other paladins added that it's been a while since they've seen such an exemplary sword. But that doesn't mean that he passed. The verification process is not over yet. Ilia Lindsay also needs to prove that she belongs in this group. Since she's the descendant of the Lindsay family, some of the old men had high expectations. They also respect Ednet's recommendation. Instead of letting her spar against one of the veterans, Ilia just went up and recounted how she cut through the demon's darkness inside the dungeon. She added that the young lady was able to learn Blade of the Hero at an astonishing pace. Finally, Ilia looked Ilia straight in the eyes and announced that she'd be officially vouching for her. She's doing so because Ilia Lindsay already qualifies as an exemplary swordsman. Instead of joy for being recognized, Ilia felt the dam of emotion in her head breaking. She unconsciously backed away from everyone, like a scared little girl. Ilia excused herself for a quick second and immediately made a clumsy mad dash away from the training grounds. Aaron didn't like seeing Ilia getting so bothered and flustered like that. But the young lady just kept on running. She wasn't running fast. She was running like she didn't know what else to do. She kept on asking herself why she was dashing away. Why is Idiot's acknowledgement so extremely agitating in her mind? She thought it had passed. She thought she would be fine now. Ilia thought that those feelings from the past would not have control over her anymore. Yet, here she was still letting the feelings that she harbored for such a long time sway her. As Ilia makes a mad dash towards the exit, the old paladins are left confused. One of them even thought that she had run away because they were staring too much. But the root cause of it all was most likely Idiot. Everyone knows the history between her and Ilia's brother. It's a complicated thing. Aaron has to stay, but he's extremely worried about his card. Julius has to intervene to get back to the topic at hand. Speaking bluntly, he announces that the two promising talents will not be allowed to join their forces, and that the decision is final. Before Aaron could protest, Julius continued that he was definitely surprised at how much promise the young man showed. However, this expedition force is not one you can join solely on promise alone. But since Aaron has come this far, he'll explain. They dubbed themselves the Purification Force. All the fighters here have either formally retired or have been officially declared dead. It's an organization where their identities must be hidden, while moving in secrecy. Their ultimate mission is to protect the world from the malice of demons. The world could descend into chaos if they learned that the demons prevailed. At that point, the dimensional split between the human and demon realms will burst open. That's why Purification Force members must be kept to a minimum, only selecting the best of the best. If they want to expand their roster, there's Karakam of the West, the 5 great sword houses, and Runetel Kingdom's 3 patriarchs. It's logical to prioritize them first. Aaron understands what the veterans are saying, but it is still disheartening. So, he asks if he becomes stronger. So strong that a demon's malice could not even touch him. Would they take him in as a member of the Force then? Julius looks the young man directly in his eyes and feels unwavering conviction. But the big boss has to flex a little to clear some things up, because they intend to end the whole thing before the young man can even become strong enough to join. The pressure that Julius is emitting is like a solid block that Aaron can barely withstand. Reeling back from the pressure, the big boss wants to present our boy with a way to join, if he still insists on doing so. When he asks what he needs, the captain just gives him a name: Kun. If he can find Kun and get that man's acknowledgement, Julius will reconsider signing him up into the Purification Force. Ilia has run away so far that she has reached the woodland areas. She ended up running away when the heat was on. She took the frustrations directed at herself out using her blade. Ilia already feels something since she arrived at the banquet hall. Idiot doesn't care about her at all. So she tells herself that she wouldn't give a damn too. She was doing so well in keeping that up, but the sight of Idiot looking at her nonchalantly, vouching for her entry to the Force, was too much. Being labeled as an exemplary swordsman by the person she loathes messed with her head big time. She recalls the reason why he was able to pass the trial and cut through the darkness. She remembers all of it. Everything Ilia did in the expedition was so she could get acknowledgement from Idiot. She got that, but the Black Knight's captain couldn't care less about her. She was starting to doubt if she could ever break away from this complex, if she'll ever be free from the hold that Idiot has had on her for such a long time. While she is having trouble processing what she is feeling, a comforting voice interrupts. She turns around and the tears she was trying so hard to resist start pouring down. It is her dad. It has been a while since they've seen each other. Ilia immediately drops the sword she was holding onto for dear life and runs to the embrace of her father like a little child who has been away for far too long. He can see and sense that his precious daughter had a hard time on her travels, but everything will be all right now. The comforting words of someone who knew her story completely broke the wall that the poor young lady had been trying to protect. Back in the training ground, Julius is giving Aaron his ticket for reconsideration. Kun is the man that Kabara has told him about. He was the one who became a sword master at the ripe old age of 70. Julius explains that Kun has stricter standards than anyone, but that man evaluates everyone accordingly. His acknowledgement will be enough to convince everyone in the force. That's all Julius could divulge. From now on, what he does is entirely up to him. Their conversation is disrupted by a dominant voice. Joshua Lindsay, patriarch of the Lindsay house, has entered the building. This is the first time that Aaron has seen Ilia's dad. It looks as though he is quite familiar with Lord Julius. Joshua has heard that his daughter has been involved with some unpleasant business. There's a lot that he'd like to ask, but those can wait for now. More importantly, he wants to take that blonde young man away for a moment. Lord Julius is fine with it, and Aaron is super confused. After confirming that he's Irene Pereira, the patriarch does not even spare him a glance and orders the young man to follow. It seems like that man has found out that his girl went up against a powerful demon. Things just got a little complicated. At least Aaron will be enough to distract Joshua for a little while. It's an open secret that Joshua Lindsay is known for having a soft spot for his daughter. The patriarch is currently on a power trip, asking a question and interrupting whenever he wants. When he brings up the young man's closeness with his daughter, Aaron innocently answers that they were close indeed. That sets off Joshua to a jolting rage. He heard that Ilia was supposed to be traveling in a group of 4, yet it's only her and Aaron right now. Joshua wants to know if this was Aaron's plan all along, a plan to intentionally make some moves on his treasured daughter, a ploy to end up alone with the fair young maiden. Aaron finally realizes what is happening and clumsily tries to clear up the misunderstanding. He insists that he didn't try hitting on Ilia or anything like that throughout their travels together. But Joshua interprets that as Aaron saying that his daughter is not even worth hitting on.
Stop it. Get some help.
Our boy is already flustered and panicking. Joshua's crazy ass is too much for the innocent young man. This absurd interrogation culminates in Joshua Lindsay drawing his aura blade and demanding that Aaron do the same. He has to comply or he would have been slaughtered right there and then. This dude is seriously trying to duel Aaron, regardless of how he answers. In their initial clash, the young man had to bust out everything he had to barely defend. Joshua thinks that pretending to be a good boy makes Aaron even more guilty. Our hero tries to regain his footing while getting blown away by Joshua's brute force. The patriarch doesn't intend to give him a chance to take a breather though, lunging forward with top speed. Aaron has to think quickly and act quickly. Every strike that follows carries some serious power behind it. None of them are easy to block. The fight inevitably devolves to Aaron blocking with his life on the line, and Joshua chasing for another shot. He'd never experienced being pushed so far back from the sheer force of sword swings like this. But when our boy is finally left open, Joshua is ready to land a kill shot. Thankfully, Aaron has picked up a lot of tricks here and there, spinning while using his sword as leverage to dodge. One thing's for sure, this isn't a guided battle at all. That grumpy old man is relentlessly attacking him with raw emotions behind each swing. Aaron couldn't even comprehend why he was in this position. Let's rewind the clock back to 2 weeks ago. Inside a lavish carriage, Patriarch Joshua had just received news that his daughter was in grave danger. They had an artifact, a map to locate anyone using imprinted blood. Normally, the flame on the map representing the blood should burn in a green hue. However, Lady Ilia's flame was burning in a sickening pitch-black shade. In this case, something denser than magic is at play. For example, she was probably trapped in a space filled with demonic malice. Joshua feared for his little girl's life and immediately headed for her location. He arrived just in time when everyone had returned, and Court Mage Perry received him graciously. The mage recounted everything that happened in the dungeon, and Joshua was finally able to breathe in relief. It was absurd that a noble patriarch would come all this way to check on his daughter. Joshua also opposed the idea of Ilia heading out on a journey back then. He has become even more of a worrywart after his son went missing. Perry commented that Ilia is a fine sword master herself, that she was traveling with a sorcerer cat and a dependable comrade, so there was nothing to worry about. When asked if Perry was talking about her academy friends, that's when Joshua was informed that she was venturing with only one young man, named Irene Pereira. There were supposed to be 4 people at that party, the last time Emma checked, and Joshua didn't like the sound of a man and a woman traveling by their lonesome. Her Ilia was traveling one-on-one, so it's natural for a dad to need to get a good look at that punk, Aaron's face. So back to the present, the simple interrogation has turned into a full-on sword fight. Aaron realizes that this won't end if he keeps on just defending. he needs to make a move. He finally stops using his sword as a shield and makes a few swings of his own. Joshua actually compliments his swordsmanship, thinking that this young man has been hiding his strength this whole time. If that's the case, he adds a challenge to block his next attack. Aaron is quite familiar with the technique Joshua is priming. He pegs it as the sword of the sky attack. He already blocked something like this before. He just needed to bust out a sword of the sky of his own. When the wild winds dissipate, the only thing left is two swordsmen in the field, under the beautiful blue skies. The patriarch is dumbfounded that his ace was neutralized so effectively. This stranger just perfectly executed their family's signature attack to counter. Joshua immediately reaches for the worst-case scenario. He reckons that Aaron must have stolen the technique after enticing his daughter. His killing intent soars to the high heavens, a bigger storm of wild winds converging into his blade. He unleashes a borderline apocalyptic attack that grinds the young man down into the ground. That crazy technique leaves a massive crater in the middle of the field. Aaron lies in the middle, passed out. Joshua looks at what he just did and has to admit that he got a little too riled up this time. The sweet voice of his daughter calling Aaron's name sends the old man into a panic. Ilia runs right into the crater, trying to tend to her Karin's injuries and hurriedly checking on his overall condition. She is furious with her dad, as Joshua tries to pass things off as some messed up guidance training. Of course, she doesn't buy that lackluster excuse. Ilia and Emma have to help Aaron back up. Thankfully, he managed to properly defend himself and could walk on without assistance. He goes up to the patriarch and thanks the old man for sparring with him, and he learns a lot from it. Also, he wants to make a request for another session of this so-called guidance training next time. Aaron has clear reasons why he must become stronger, as strong as he could possibly become. So, he'll take anything he can get. Ilia looks at her father with a deadly stare, and Joshua is forced to comply with the young man's request. Joshua clears his throat and agrees to guide Aaron for the remaining time that he's here. Training will be in the same place every night by 7. Going full crazy mode tired the old man out. He needed to get some rest, leaving Ilia to Emma's care for now. Looking at how much Ilia is smiling with the boy, is starting to realize that his little girl's condition has been improving thanks to Aaron. The kid also seems nice and well-mannered, not to mention extremely skilled for his young age. Even with that impressive profile, Joshua still refuses to accept. Starting tomorrow, he will make sure to show that young man hell. Not far from the dungeon, something has taken over a little hidden cavern in the middle of the woods. That familiar sinister, unnerving clown mask, it looks like the Purification Force's investigation was right after all. The demon clown that the expedition team seemingly took down was still up and running, albeit a little bandaged up and weakened. But it's just a matter of time before this malicious being can regain its full strength. The power of evil is already returning slowly. Bozo feels particularly upset regarding that black-haired woman that finished him off, thinking that she must be from the Holy Kingdom. That aura attack filled with holy power was perilous. If she's that strong, then surviving the self-destruction magic is already a given. The clown is also aware that the paladins will start making their moves soon. The demon's idea of payback was to release some dummies to throw the entire continent into chaos. Once the dimensional gap opens, Bozo could return to the demon realm for recovery. That's the plan, but a man wearing a priest's garb heavily disagrees. He asserts that the clown cannot return to the demon realm. It seems like Bozo doesn't know who this human was and starts panicking. But upon giving it another thought, the demon realizes that he must have been mistaken. This priest that we've seen advising Ilia back then was actually a demon as well. He doesn't even bother denying it when the clown points it out. The clown already thought that there would be other demons besides him left in this rotting human realm, but encountering another one here was unexpected. It's all business. The priest needs the clown's help to distract the Holy Kingdom just for a little while. Demons don't really move just to help their kin. The clown asks why he would follow the priest's request. It's simple. Really, Bazov has been discovered, and the Holy Kingdom will start poking around the whole continent pretty soon. That's going to hinder the work that the priests have been doing in the background. When asked what that work entails, the priest reveals that he's currently raising a human. However, this step is just one of the many stepping stones for his grand plan. His ultimate goal is to demonize the entire human realm. The clown snickers. It's as if this priest hasn't heard how the Dragon King's story ended. It doesn't matter if you're a powerful demon, fate tends to hand those with wide-reaching ambition miserable endings. But the priest has something that might change Bozo's tone. Beckoning a dark power, he starts transmitting something out of his finger. The demon clown receives the instant transmission directly into its mischievous mind and frowns. This frown is quickly followed by an amused snicker. It's plain to see Bozo failed to recognize that he was in the presence of such a prestigious guest. Every demon thought that it was only a myth, a legend. No one thought that an anomaly could really exist. A demon who wasn't born in the demon realm, a demon that defied the very laws of this world. A whole week has passed since Aaron started receiving guidance training from Ilia's father. He's currently walking through the path he has been taking for the past 7 days. Each day he came in, more bruised and wounded than before. But he's making progress. Yesterday was the first time he was able to last half an hour during training. It's better than the first day, but he's got a long way to go. His only goal for today was to last for at least an hour, doubling his record time. He arrived at their training place, and it sounded like Joshua was already entertaining a different student. Ignet Crescentia stood before the patriarch of House Lindsay. The history between them was palpable in the air. Seeing that the captain of the Black Knights was here, Aaron watched as the impending spar was about to begin. She grabbed her blade by the hilt and slowly took it out while asking permission to get started. Joshua remained stalwart, his voice a little grimmer, as he dared her to bring it on. Ignet's first leap was a blink and you'll miss it moment. Her speed was no joke. Her strike was fast, but Joshua's reaction time was a little faster, blocking the slash with little effort. Aaron wanted to watch the spar, but the succeeding sequences that those two masters of the sword did were quite hard to keep up with. The Patriarch has been adopting a passive defensive style, utilizing well-placed blocks and perfectly timed parries. Ignet, on the other hand, is going at it as if she had the intent to kill, relentless, wild, and unforgiving. Both fighters stood at the upper echelon of experts, and that fact was apparent just by looking at how calm they were with every collision. Aaron was having trouble watching up close on account of the two being too fast. Not only that, but each of their attacks has such brutal force behind it. The grumpy patriarch has been quite passive for a while now, but when the opportunity presented itself, his eyes did not miss an opening. He took a break from dodging and blocking, opening his stance up for a vicious kick, right in the middle of Ignet's body, sending her flying like a ragdoll. While the target was in midair, Joshua emitted his aura into his slender blade, transforming it into a devastatingly lethal weapon. He unleashed the sword of the sky, conjuring a wild tornado, zigzagging and destroying the ground beneath, homing in on its target. Ignet was no slouch. She might have been knocked around, but she quickly regained control of her entire body in the air. She fluidly dodged the tornado, landing back on the surface and hitting the ground running. An untrained eye would only see a black blur swirling from a distance, closing the gap in a heartbeat. The next series of exchanges was nothing but a hazy explosion of skill and raw power. Booming sounds followed every metallic clang of the blade. Aaron could not take his eyes off this brilliant display of skills. The two have been going at it non-stop, with such strong attacks, one after the other. You could see that Ignet was taking this duel quite seriously. Neither one of them was giving the other a single moment to rest and collect their bearings. A deep-seethed rage was roaring inside the Patriarch's mind. He was fighting the swordsman that practically destroyed his son's future. That rage ultimately culminated in a beautifully haunting eruption of vigor and talent. It took a few moments for the dust to finally clear up. It was as if a brilliant collision of the highest level didn't just happen. A black sword lodged into the ground for support. Ignet Crescentia remained standing after such a grueling match. This was not like the duels she usually has. The Patriarch actually pushed her to the limits. On the other side was Joshua Lindsay, except for the loose dust circling him. He looked pristine, just a light workout. While he towered over the captain, he asked her if she gained anything. Ignet sounded dejected, as she answered that she did not gain anything from this defeat. The Patriarch was barely holding in his fury, proposing that he could just continue beating her up until she came to a realization. She lifted her head up, looked him straight in the eye, and permitted Joshua to do just that. If that's what he wished to do, she won't reject it. He clenched his fist, controlling his temper, while closing his eyes. Joshua Lindsay had no choice but to watch something that a parent shouldn't have to witness. Even after seeing his son fall into deep despair after sparring with Ignet, the father could not find the right words of comfort to give his boy. He held on to the hope that maybe he'd be able to get back up on his own, but we'd all know that it didn't happen. If only he had been able to say something, anything, then maybe Carl wouldn't have disappeared. Joshua just wasn't courageous enough. He laughed at the irony of their situation. It might sound ridiculous, but Ibnet might be the only person he could think of to share this burden with. Looking at her expression, it seemed like she had something that she wanted to say. When she was young, she used to live in an abandoned house with her friends and younger siblings. Ibnet honestly shared that she had never really thought twice about Carl Lindsay. That fact will likely remain true in the future as well. However, as the one who faced the patriarch's son, she felt that Joshua should know what type of person she is at her core and what she intends to live for. That's precisely why she shared a tidbit of her story. Joshua could finally see it clearly. Everything about this woman tells its own story. Her voice, her eyes, her energy, it all contained her history. There is a clear reason why she was able to come this far. Ibnet Crescentia has grown and developed remarkably. With that realization, he turned to their curious onlooker and asked Aaron if he also had something to say. Since he overheard someone else's private story for free, it's only fair that he too shares something with them. The young man was caught off guard. He's not the storytelling type, and he wouldn't even know where to start. That act was not going to fly with Joshua, though. That anger was now directed to Aaron, demanding to know everything about the boy. Why did he become a swordsman? How did he get to this point, and how did he end up traveling with Ilia? He looked at Ibnet, but she was just giving him the side-eye. Aaron wasn't sure where to start, but he gave Joshua everything he wanted to know. His story thus far, and how he ended up in this place. Ibnet listened throughout the retelling of Aaron's life and realized something. She finally understood the reason why Aaron was able to grow at such a monstrous pace. How he overcame obstacles normally impossible on his own. The good times and the bad. The sparks of hope and compassion interlaced in his experiences. All of it was because of the bonds he had with the comrades he traveled with. Ibnet couldn't help but ask if she also has any precious bonds like Aaron does. Has she just been constantly turning herself away from genuine connections? That question set a literal blaze in her heart. Aaron and Joshua knew what this meant. It's an aura awakening. If that's the case, then Aaron's life story influenced Ibnet heavily somehow. It would be great if that was the reason. But now, the gap between the two of them has only gotten wider, and Aaron doesn't want to fall behind anymore. With his own blazing heart, he promised that he would definitely catch up. The patriarch finally smiled, congratulating Ibnet on another significant leap. She turned to Aaron and gave him the challenge to join the expedition forces within the next 3 years. Aaron responded with a counteroffer, a single year. Within 1 year, he will get Kun to acknowledge his strength and return to join the purification force. Night came, and Joshua was busy pondering what happened in the field earlier. He's never seen someone awaken through hearing someone's story. He is certain that Ibnet Crescentia will continue to achieve greatness. And as much as he disliked the boy, he knew that Irene Pereira would be remarkable one day. Seeing the new generation come closer to their peaks, he couldn't help but break down in tears. If only his son hadn't disappeared. Carl could have shown such promise and potential. Alas, only a few drops of alcohol could numb the patriarch's pain. Where in the world is his son?